10,000 babies a year are getting sick. 1,000 of those have died, and it doesn't have to happen. I'm Craig Rivera, and this is Inside Edition Weekend.
We got the story.
Next flight to Chicago. We gotta go live.
A young couple and their children are brutally murdered in their home. But many think another terrible injustice happened in the courthouse.
If we supposed to get justice, how do we get justice like this? Idiots!
Now this family says justice really is blind.
Going in.
Tell me when you first heard the term Group B strep.
The day Jordan died. He died of septic shock because of Group B strep.
It's deadly, and it's killing and crippling thousands of babies.
At least 10,000 babies who are sick with Group B streptococcal infection.
Why are so many babies dying when a simple $35 test could have saved their lives?
Just one question.
Inside Edition's Downtown Julie Brown brings you the latest fashion craze to hit the runways, and it's a hot new trend that will make you go, oh, baby, baby, baby.
Well, it works. I feel young, free, maybe not so innocent.
2, 1.
Hello, and thanks for watching today. Welcoming a healthy new baby into the world is a time that parents cherish throughout their lives. But for some parents, a simple test that can prevent serious illness with their newborns is being withheld by doctors, turning that moment of joy into a painful and unnecessary tragedy. We'll have that story later on. But first, a family of 4 brutally killed. A sensational trial follows. Now there is anger and disbelief. As Joe Loy reports, the family of the victims are convinced justice has not been done.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict in this case?
It was a day the citizens of Reno County, Kansas had waited for. The trial of Paul Kaiser, a 23-year-old ex-Marine, was about to end. Kaiser had been arrested last November, charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. His victims were Tim and Dina Peters and their 2 children, Joshua and Angela. It was one of the most horrendous and brutal crimes ever to strike this small farming community.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
The jury's verdicts of manslaughter and second-degree murder instead of the maximum first-degree murder sent the courtroom into chaos.
If you're sorry, son of a don't know what justice is. You piece of if we supposed to get justice, how do we get justice like this? Idiots!
It made me sick to my stomach. It made me so upset and angry. It just made me mad. I wanted to go after him.
Many say the last thing the Peters family got was justice. First-degree murder convictions would have put Kaiser away for life, but the jury's verdict changed all that. Reno County Prosecutor Tim Chambers.
If he were to receive the minimum sentence allowed by law, he would be released in under 10 years. Barbara Peters is Tim Peters' mother. The family's murder and trial has left her devastated.
We are living it twice. We lived it on November the 5th, 1993. We lived it the first time. And now they have killed this family again by not coming back with enough for this on this man.
Last November, Paul Kaiser, a neighbor of the Peters, became an uncontrollable killing machine. To this day, no one knows why.
He just drove to a rural farmhouse, southwest Reno County, took in a 12-gauge shotgun, and basically executed a family of 4 therein.
Police believe that after a night of drinking, smoking marijuana, and listening to 900 sex lines, Kaiser, who police say was sexually attracted to Dina Peters, drove to the young family's home. Telling Tim Peters his truck had broken down, he entered the family's home. Then, like the swift wind that blows across the Kansas plains, he swept their lives away.
Any murder, of course, is a horrible crime, but this one particularly, involving a whole family, wiping a whole family out and children for no reason at all.
Kaiser shot Tim and Dina Peters first. Next came 6-year-old Joshua. Last was 4-year-old Angela, who police claim was beaten to death. After the murders, Kaiser then set the Peters home on fire. But Kaiser had a different story to tell.
That the other two persons who he gave a statement about were the ones that killed the Peters family, and that he only participated in dousing the house with diesel fuel, and that they set the fire.
Kaiser called the police and admitted that he was present when the murders took place, but he says the killers were two men whom he met outside a local bar. He says the two men forced him to come along and lure Tim Peters into letting them into their house.
I think the true part is that he was there, and the rest is fabricated.
When police searched Kaiser's home, they found the murder weapon with Tim Peters' blood on it, numerous pornographic materials, books on serial killers, and several other weapons. And the bullets found in the burnt-out debris of the Peters home matched Kaiser's gun.
In the 17 years that I've been doing this, I believe that this is probably one of the best cases that we had.
And as for the two mystery men who Kaiser says did the killing,
we never were able to turn up anyone who could have been related to this crime other than Paul Kaiser.
I really scared, because there's just so much violence that took place right behind me, and I just, we can hardly handle it.
Today, the home the Peters lived in is gone. What was left after the fire was bulldozed over, and all that remains are 4 crosses in memory of the victims and the children's homemade swing moving silently in the wind. Phil Peters is Tim's brother. Some have criticized his courtroom outbursts, but he remains defiant.
So they're all a bunch of idiots. I will not apologize to one of them. Hell will freeze over before that happens.
I really wanted to hang my head. It was bad. I just thought, oh dear, I can't believe that I did this.
Doris Stewart was a juror on the Kaiser trial. According to her, she and 8 other members of the jury wanted first-degree murder, but 3 held out, saying the prosecution never proved that the 2 other men did not exist.
They didn't prove to us that he was there by himself, that we kind of felt that there might have been 2 other people.
Jody Reed was one of the jurors who felt Kaiser did not act alone, even though Kaiser's statement to police was the only evidence presented at the trial to support his story. However, even if the 2 mystery men do exist, the DA says the jurors missed a very important point.
It didn't make any difference whether anyone else was there or not. The law clearly says if you aid and abet in the commission of a crime, you're equally guilty.
According to the law, he could still be charged with first-degree murder, even if there were other people, because he brought them to the house.
Well, I guess, but I don't, what if he is forced? Then, you know, nobody knows if maybe those people forced him.
What made you think he was forced?
He said that they held the gun to him.
After 3 days of deliberations, some members of the jury say they decided to come to a compromise. They were afraid a hung jury would set Kaiser free.
They could have asked the judge what a hung jury is. That was her job, for them to go ask her. And that's what they're using for a cop-out.
But the jury never asked the question, and finally, the 9 jurors for first-degree murder gave in to the 3 holdouts.
How did 3 people change 9 people's minds? I would like to know, how did they do that?
So would the rest of the Peters family as they still search for justice.
Well, Paul Kaiser is set to be sentenced at the end of this month. He could get as few as 12 years in prison. And when we come back, our investigation into why babies are dying when it could be prevented.
It's amazing that something so simple the Medical Association doesn't check for.
The time has come for us to take this seriously and do something about it.
The birth of a child can be a time of great joy. My wife Cordelia and I were lucky enough to experience that joy this week with the birth of our healthy son, Austin Cruz. But some parents aren't so fortunate. As Janet Tamaro uncovered in this investigation, some doctors are not telling parents all they need to know.
Day 1. It is September 29, 1993. Corbin Brett Palmer, the third child of Lisa and Ken Palmer, is born. The Sacramento family wants to record every joyous moment.
It's a big buildup when you're pregnant. We already knew he was a boy.
Day 2. Their joy has been replaced by fear. All is not well with this little baby. Day 3. Day 4.
Oh, look at him. He is gorgeous.
And you can't mix dopamine with TCM.
Okay, so that was Day 5. Corbin gets sicker, and his parents baptize him in the hospital. They continue to videotape, fearing this may be all they'll have to remember him.
By the 6th or 7th day, they knew that he had a brain bleed, and it got worse and worse and worse. And then by the 8th, we did all the tests, and he was basically brain dead. So we had to make the choice on letting him try to live, which he probably wouldn't have, or to unhook him and let him die on his own. That's what we did.
For parents, there is no greater pain than the death of their child. But for the Palmers and for thousands of other American families, their agony cuts even deeper. After they took their son off of life support, they learned that his death was probably preventable. And not with million-dollar medical care, with a simple $35 test and about $100 worth of antibiotics. The illness that killed Corbin is called Group B streptococcus, or Group B strep.
Group B streptococcus is a bacteria that is the most common cause of bloodstream and nervous system infections or meningitis among newborn infants in the United States.
Group B strep is a common bacteria found in 1 out of 4 pregnant women. It's usually harmless, but during labor and delivery, babies passing through the birth canal can inhale the bacteria. Most babies will not become infected with Group B strep, but 2 out of 1,000 will. Among those most at risk, women who deliver prematurely and women whose water breaks early.
If you think about the more than 4 million babies born each year, at least 10,000 babies are sick with Group B streptococcal infection. This number I've just quoted to you really hasn't changed since the early 1970s. So you're talking about 2 decades of this going on.
Given that it's the most common deadly infection among newborns, given the fact that thousands die from it or end up with permanent brain damage, and given that it's preventable if mothers are cultured and those who test positive and are at high risk are treated with antibiotics, you'd think you would have heard of it. But doctors do not have to test for it or warn their patients of the dangers because it is not a standard part of care, and that makes these parents angry.
Tell me when you first heard the term Group B strep.
The day Jordan died. He died of septic shock because of Group B strep.
Leslie Gaisley's third son, Jordan, was born prematurely. He lived 1 day.
My reaction was, why have I never heard of Group B strep, and why was I never offered the test for it?
Dr. Joseph Anzalone delivered Leslie's baby. He'd seen Group B strep before many times, but this death was different.
It was kind of a wake-up call. I thought, are we willing to culture everyone, treat all these people that are positive just to save 1 baby, you know, out of 100 women who are positive for Group B strep? Are we willing to do that? And the answer, of course, was yes.
But most obstetricians are not in favor of mandatory screening. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says there is not yet enough evidence to recommend routine screening. Instead, they recommend selective screening for high-risk patients. But the American Academy of Pediatrics, the doctors who end up caring for the sick babies, recommends routine screening, meaning testing every pregnant woman at 26 to 28 weeks. Neither group recommends informing patients of the test or the risks of Group B strep.
It's amazing that something so simple the medical association doesn't check for.
The cost to try to keep our baby alive was, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that would have tested how many women? You know, 7,000 women, that's quite a few.
No doctor wants babies to die, but OBGYNs contend that screening may not be a simple fix.
Group B strep has inherent problems, and that is it doesn't lend itself to one type of screening test, because a patient may test positive one time, may be negative the next time. So if I test somebody today, she may be negative, and the next time she may be positive. And if you try to go to like routine screening, it would be too difficult.
Dr. Phelan instead prefers to give all of his high-risk patients antibiotics.
Anybody who criticizes cultures as a screening method does have a case. We do miss 5%.
Why do you think there's so much resistance to doing some kind of screening?
The scenario, although it sounds blunt, is if I don't screen and don't know who carries it, if something goes wrong, then I can't be held responsible because I didn't know.
It sounds to me like what you're saying is OBGYNs are afraid of getting sued, but aren't they at more risk if they don't screen?
I think they're at risk just from practicing obstetrics.
Can you say dog? Good.
But parents like Mary and Shane Anderson can't understand why they weren't at least told about Group B strep. 3-year-old Lindsay seemed perfectly healthy at birth, but soon afterwards came down with a Group B strep infection that caused meningitis. She's now partially blind, brain damaged, and has frequent epileptic seizures.
Lindsay, get up. Get up, honey.
You okay?
You okay?
Yeah.
You've got almost matter of fact about it.
Yeah.
Happens that frequently?
It's happened for 2 years now. At least 30 times a day. I've documented it's been about between 30 and 35 times a day.
Did your OBGYN say anything to you?
At a year old, Lindsay was in the hospital for a seizure at Lompoc Hospital. And he came in just to see how I was doing, and I matter-of-factly said to him, just please test every other woman so they don't have to go through this. Looked at me, said it's not cost-effective, and walked out.
Mary Anderson's doctor did not return our calls or faxed requests for an interview. If, as Mary said, he feels testing isn't cost-effective, we'd like to show him a recent Centers for Disease Control study that says screening and treating are cost-effective. But in spite of that argument, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists still wants to wait for more evidence that screening will work.
You're talking about a potentially lethal, potentially preventable, in a cost-effective way, disease. And the time has come for us to take this seriously and do something about it.
You can't go back and say, wow, I wish I would have known more about it. You need to educate yourself if your doctor's not going to educate you.
Indeed. And there's a number if you'd like more information about Group B strep. That's 919-932-5344. And when Inside Edition Weekend continues, downtown Julie Brown with a new fashion look.
Baby dolls, they're back.
You know, I just can't keep up with all this fashion stuff. It's too complicated. But our downtown Julie Brown is a fashion expert, and she reports that the latest trend is strictly kid stuff.
Well, spring is in the air and summer's just around the corner. If that doesn't make you feel young, try one of these. Baby dolls, they're back. Fashion followers of America, it's time to regress. The hottest threads on runways used to be found exclusively at Kids R Us. They're called baby dolls. Yes, designers are reproducing childlike fashions in grown-up sizes, and supermodels are going goo-goo gaga.
I love baby doll dresses because they are, I have a very small waist and it fits perfectly.
The leader in this trend is New York-based designer Betsy Johnson. We popped into her New York boutique to check out the look that the fashion world hasn't seen since the swinging 60s. Well, baby dolls are back, is that right?
Yes, they are.
And why do you think they're back now?
I think they're very easy for almost everybody to wear. They look really good. They make you feel good, young, innocent.
So, Tanya, I'm in the mood to feel young, even maybe a little innocent. Can you help me?
Definitely. Here's my favorite.
All right, then. Baby doll time. Let's see. Ta-da! Well, it works. I feel young, free, maybe not so innocent. Forget about unbronzing your baby shoes because designer Peter Fox has created toddler shoes for adults.
How do they feel?
I feel like I'm taking my first step. The baby doll fashion craze hasn't escaped controversy. This spread in the New York Times Magazine caused quite a stir with the critics who said the fashions were in bad taste and that they were sending an unhealthy message suggesting children as sex objects.
I think designers are simply running out of ideas and are doing anything in order to get some attention.
But the controversy isn't slowing down baby doll sales. Folks at Betsy Johnson say they're flying off the racks. But does this look carry an age limit? After all, you don't want to pull a Betty Davis, do you?
I've written a letter to Daddy.
Oh, baby. And Inside Edition Weekend, we'll be right back. And here's what's coming up Monday on Inside Edition.
When a stranger came to town, no one knew about his dangerous past.
We weren't told about him.
And when this mother found out that stranger was a convicted child molester,
I was outraged.
now that stranger awaits trial for murdering her son, and she's out to change the law.
If it takes me my whole life, this is going to stop.
America is watching a mother's fight to keep children safe.
That's it for us today. I'm Craig Rivera. Have a great weekend.